you doing?
Plotting out the next path that my players are going to take in my upcoming campaign here in a few weeks. Can't decide which town I want them to go to, though.
Okay. Well, you do know that we have an obligation to our viewers for the second episode.
Is the camera rolling?
I don't know, Austin. Is the camera rolling?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You should be. You should be. Well, would you like to start now, or are you busy?
We can start now.
Put your nose in another book. Then we can start. Well, hey, folks! I'm Fundy.
And I'm Austin.
And this is The Dice and Quill, a web series where we give you, the viewers, our views, topics, opinions, and discussions about everything role-playing. Today we are going to do part 2 of our DM's Corner episode on world building, specifically talking about encounters.
Right, so last time we covered general world building, populating your world, creating your world, yada 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 yada. Today we want to go a little bit more in depth in it. Encounters. Something has to happen to your players from when they go from point A to point B. Something's going to happen in between that. Otherwise, it's just it's a walk in the park, and that's no fun. We want to fight something. We want something to happen to these players. So, and like I said earlier, part of your job as a DM is to make a memorable experience to your players. Your players aren't going to remember a walk in the park to go retrieve some kid's ice cream cone. No. Your players are going to remember a walk down the path, fall into a dry riverbed, and have to fight off numerous enemies in an attempt to retrieve a kid's stolen ice cream cone. So, can you explain to them what pork is? Because I have never heard that term before.
Well, you other DMs might call it something different, but I like to call it pork. So, essentially, I've got a starting point for the session, a middle thing that I kind of want them to do, and then an ending point. Alright? So, at the bare minimum, I want them to do this, this, and this. Well, if I just have them do this, this, and this, my session is going to last about an hour and a half. But these guys want to play for a lot longer, all right? I've got them for 3.5, maybe 4 hours, maybe even more, depending on how hardcore you guys are. And so what am I going to do in between point A, point B, and point C? Well, that's what I like to call throwing in some pork, all right? And when I talk about pork, I'm talking about encounters. Now, encounters don't necessarily always have to be fighting. Encounters could be an environmental challenge, an encounter. You know, if it's an Arctic region, maybe an ice-filled lake. If it's a jungle region, maybe a bit of mountaineering across a waterfall ravine. If it's a desert, you know, let's talk about rope bridge across a canyon kind of thing. And so I want to take this fluff and I want to put them in the appropriate places. That way, now, instead of just point A, point B, point C, my players are constantly doing something, are constantly having fun. The fighters are fighting. The wizards are casting spells. The rogues are using their skills. All the way up to this end point. And I've turned that hour and a half session into the 3 hours that I needed it to by throwing in pork.
Right. And the biggest things about encounters is everyone does, well, not everyone, but a lot of people fall into the rut of using the same RPG tropes, you know, skeletons in the dungeons, bandits on the roads, and things like that. But that gets repetitive if you keep doing it over and over and over and over again, because we've all seen it. We played it in video games, we've seen it in movies, so change it up a little. So, with that being said, we're going to talk about a little bit about unique locations and encounters.
So, some cool examples, at least in my opinion, that are unique, you know, and again, as opposed to skeletons in the corridor, rats in the basement, you know, goblins in the forest. Let's use that environment, and let's think of some cool places that you would like to see them fight, like if you were watching a movie, you know, and let's not forget reoccurring bad guys. You got your main protagonist. Well, if he's got some reoccurring bad guys, that's a good thing to use. Something else to think about. Let's say if they're in a forest, a crazed druid who is turning all of the animals into fey-touched super beings in order to protect the forest against poor little woodcutters that are trying to build this village next to it. And so now when you go into that forest, you're dealing with, squirrels from like that cartoon Open Season when it's throwing acorns at you. You're dealing with, the rabbit from Monty Python that's chewing people's faces off and stuff like that. Because this druid's lost his or her mind, And so you gotta fight all these crazy woodland creatures and then get to the main boss, the druid. Something that I like to use, think of a bunch of dumb old kobolds that stumbled across a dire crocodile. And they think it's a dragon. And so they start to worship it as a god. This just happens to be in the sewers under a village. And so they're coming out at night and they're kidnapping kids and stuff like that, bringing them in the sewers and sacrificing it to their god. And so that's something the players have to go into. That's unique. That's a little different, And there's a whole myriad of other things you can use. Use the environment, different environments. And so you've got a forest encounter with woodland creatures and a druid. You have a subterranean, a sewer encounter. Yeah, you can throw in some rats and things like that in there too. But you got kobolds, and you got that dire crocodile is kind of like a boss fight. It's a different environment, a different place to fight in, with different twists and turns. Using trees as cover as opposed to turning a corner, diving under the water if there's a fire attack. Utilizing all these things and making it unique is what's going to make your players remember your game.
Right, and another rut a lot of DMs, including myself, I'm guilty of this too, fall into, is using the same bar over and over and over again. And I understand that the tavern is one of the most essential locations in any campaign. A lot of people use it as the starting point. It's the place where stories are told, passed on, quests are given, fights break out. A lot of memories, a lot of good memories of mine take place in the tavern. So that being said, don't use the same tavern over and over and over again. Not every tavern is the cantina scene from Star Wars, or your typical RPG tavern where there's the same set of patrons. Every tavern's different, so make a tavern your own.
Spice up your bar life. And going into that, it almost seems like every single time a game starts, you guys all meet at a bar. That gets really freaking old. What are some other places that we can use to have the players meet?
Well, off the top of my head, jail. You're all slung into a jail cell. You don't know what the other person did. You don't even know the other person. You're just in a jail cell. Now you got to break out together and work together.
Or maybe a crossroads, kind of like rest stop area. Or how about this one? How about you're all in a village that's being sieged by a big old war party of some sort, like a barbarian horde or something. And so, the bard is jumping out some farmer's daughter's window, with all this stuff under his arms, and he's running through this alleyway, and he bumps into, the dwarven fighter who grabbed a cask of ale before he dipped out the tavern. They bump into each other, and they're like, we gotta get out of here, I'm going this way. Good idea for me, let me get pants on. They go that way, and they meet other people along the way. The paladin's like, follow me, and they all get out, and then they get out the village. Well, hey, by the way, my name's blah, 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 blah. It throws them immediately into the action, and they kind of bind together. They become, more cohesive through that opening action.
Right. Speaking of actions, player action, choices, freedom of choices. Just know that you as players, every action you do will have consequences later down the road, either foreseen or unforeseen. Let's say your players go to a town called Long Saddle. Your damned rogue wants to steal everything not nailed to the floor, so he proceeds to do so. Y'all leave. A couple weeks go by, you come back. Suddenly there are wanted posters everywhere. You're now wanted for theft. Little things like that. One example. There's a myriad of examples there.
Oh, yeah. And as a DM, you need to kind of keep track of what your players are doing, kind of remember the things that they're doing, and this is also a good tool to use to not let characters get kind of carried away and really destroying your story, your campaign, and your world that you spend so much time building. Well, alright, you jerk, if you want to keep doing stuff like this, there's going to be some consequences. In fact, a mercenary group has taken up your bounties, and now you're being tailed by guys that are just as tough as you, kind of things. Maybe next time they'll think twice before setting your village on fire that you spent 3 months trying to build.
Well, keep that in mind, guys. Thank you for joining us today. Once again, like, subscribe, and share. Helps us out big time. And follow our Facebook group, D20 and Friends. It's growing at a steady pace, but always room for more. So once again, I'm Austin.
And I'm Fundy!
And this is
The Dice and Quill!
Stay nerdy, guys.
Bye-bye.